A mysterious little girl, her hands caked in dirt and fingers bleeding, was desperately digging a grave in a silent cemetery. When the millionaire found her, she looked into his eyes and said, "Your wife is alive. I can prove it." Those simple words shattered everything he thought he knew. What happened next would forever change the destiny of these two strangers, bound by a secret buried for 7 long years. Subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories every day. The fog snaked between the headstones like ghostly fingers, shrouding the cemetery in a translucent blanket that autumn morning. The millionaire walked with purposeful strides, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the melancholic setting. It was a weekly ritual, visiting the Italian marble tomb he had commissioned for his wife, who had passed away 7 years ago. The fortune he had amassed over the years hadn't filled the void left by the accident. He ruled a financial empire from his triplex penthouse downtown, but he lived alone, surrounded by expensive objects and superficial relationships. His face, once expressive, had hardened into a mask of indifference, etched by time and suppressed grief. As he approached the familiar tomb, something unusual caught his eye. A small figure was moving near his wife's grave. He quickened his pace, irritation rising in his chest. Who dared disturb her rest? That's when he saw the girl, a fragile creature with tangled hair and clothes that looked more like rags. Kneeling on the grave, she was digging frantically with her bare hands, her slender fingers already injured and bleeding, mixing blood with the damp earth. "What do you think you're doing?" The millionaire's voice cut through the silence like a razor. The child raised her face, and what he saw in those eyes unsettled him. It wasn't fear, as he expected, but a fierce determination, inappropriate for someone so small. She looked about 6 years old, but her eyes carried the weight of a lifetime. "I need to find her," the girl murmured, returning to her digging with renewed urgency. The millionaire grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her to stop. "This is desecration. I'm calling security right now." That's when the child looked up at him, tears streaming down her dirty face, leaving clean streaks on her grimy skin. "Your wife is alive. I can prove it." The words hit him like a physical blow. He took a step back, studying the surreal figure more closely. The girl was trembling, not from cold, but from exhaustion. Her hands were bleeding, her lips were chapped, and there was a feverish gleam in her eyes. But what truly froze the millionaire's blood was the object hanging around her neck, a peculiar pendant in the shape of a crescent moon intertwined with a star. Where did you get that?" His voice cracked, trembling for the first time in years. The girl clutched the pendant between her dirty fingers. "She gave it to me. She said you'd recognize it." The millionaire felt the world spin around him. That pendant was unique, designed by him and crafted by a jeweler in Paris. He had given it to his wife on the last night they spent together, before the nervous breakdown that led her to the clinic, before the fire that supposedly killed her. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice now just a hoarse whisper. The child looked at the grave, then at the cloudy sky, as if searching for words. "She sent me to find you. She said you'd believe, that you never stopped looking for answers." The millionaire felt his legs weaken. 7 years of mourning, of guilt, of unanswered questions. 7 years believing he had buried the body of the woman he loved there. "How do you know who I am?" he questioned, unable to process what was happening. "She has your picture. She showed it to me every day. She said that one day you would find us, but she got very sick." The girl's voice failed. "She told me to dig. She said there's no one in there, that it was all a lie." The cemetery, once silent, now seemed to throb with unrevealed secrets. The wind intensified, stirring the leaves of the trees and carrying the damp smell of freshly dug earth. The millionaire stared at the small hole made by the child's hands. An impossible decision formed in his mind: to keep digging or to ignore this surreal apparition? To accept the truth he had built, or to dive into the unknown? The millionaire stared at the little girl's outstretched hand, still with dirt under her broken nails. His world, meticulously rebuilt after the tragedy, threatened to crumble again with that simple sentence: "Your wife is alive." "How did you get here?" he asked, trying to regain his composure. He looked around, searching for a responsible adult, but the cemetery remained deserted except for the two of them. "I walked a lot." She pointed vaguely towards the horizon. She explained how to find this place, drew it like a map. "I memorized everything." The millionaire tried to maintain his rationality. A lost child, probably mentally unstable, making up stories. Maybe she found the pendant by chance or stole it from somewhere. He needed to notify the authorities. But while his calculating mind formulated logical explanations, something in his heart stirred, a painful hope that he couldn't stifle. "Where is your family? Your parents?" he questioned, crouching down to be at the girl's level. "She's my only family. We lived alone in an old house, far from everything." The child pressed the pendant against her chest. "She has scars all over her body. She speaks with difficulty. But her eyes are the same as in the picture." The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. His wife had suffered severe burns in the clinic fire. At least that's what he had been told. The body found was so charred that identification was made only by personal belongings and dental records. "What else did she tell you?" His voice came out strangled. The girl looked at the grave again. That they buried her alive, not the real her, but the lie. That you were deceived by people close to you, that there are valuable things at stake. Each word was like a knife cutting through years of constructed certainties. The millionaire remembered the days following the fire, the confusion, the contradictory reports, the clinic director's haste to close the case, and the insistence of his own lawyer that he accept the facts and move on. Why didn't she come personally? The question escaped his lips, loaded with disbelief and wounded hope. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She can't walk anymore. She's afraid of them. She said they would find her and finish the job. She paused, as if repeating memorized words. She said, "He will recognize the truth through you." The millionaire felt his heart race. That was a phrase his wife used to say, "recognize the truth," a reference to the first book they read together when they met. A cemetery groundskeeper appeared in the distance, walking toward them. The millionaire made an impulsive decision. "Come with me," he said, extending his hand to the child. The girl hesitated for a moment, looking at the small hole she had started to dig. But she said to show that there's no one inside. There are other ways to prove it. The millionaire glanced at the approaching groundskeeper, calculating the time. "Trust me." The irony of those words didn't escape him. He was asking a stranger for trust when his own trust in people had been shattered years ago. The child finally accepted his hand, the small, injured fingers leaving marks of blood and dirt on the sleeve of his expensive suit. The millionaire quickly led her away, toward the Bentley parked on the main road of the cemetery. His chauffeur's eyes widened as he saw his boss approaching with a ragged child, but he remained silent. Years of service had taught him discretion above all else. "Home!" the millionaire ordered, opening the back door and helping the girl into the luxurious vehicle. As the car glided through the city streets, away from the cemetery, the millionaire watched the child out of the corner of his eye. She was sitting upright, as if afraid to lean against the fine leather seats. Her eyes scanned the interior of the vehicle with a mixture of fascination and distrust. "What can I call you?" he asked, realizing that he still didn't know the girl's name. She turned to him with a surprisingly mature expression. She said not to tell my name to anyone. Names have power. Again, a shiver ran down the millionaire's spine. It was another phrase frequently used by his wife, a superstition that had always made him smile. As the city flashed by the window, he made a silent decision. He would investigate every word of that improbable story. Not out of hope, he had buried hope along with the supposed body of his wife, but out of the relentless need to know the truth, even if it shattered the little peace he had achieved in recent years. The arrival at the mansion was marked by astonished looks. The housekeeper, a stern woman who had managed the residence with military precision for 2 decades, let out an exclamation of shock when she saw the dirty, ragged child entering the immaculate marble foyer. "Sir, what does this mean?" she asked, stepping between the girl and the interior of the house, as if protecting the environment from contamination. The millionaire, still immersed in the tumultuous thoughts unleashed in the cemetery, replied with calculated coldness. "A guest, prepare the guest room in the east wing and provide appropriate clothing." The housekeeper hesitated, which she rarely did. "Sir, with all due respect, we can't just... This child clearly needs social services, maybe even medical attention. We should notify the authorities." The millionaire stared at her firmly. "I appreciate your concern, but that won't be necessary. I will handle the matter personally." Before the housekeeper could protest again, the millionaire's phone rang. It was his lawyer, a coincidence that instantly put him on alert. "I need to take this," he said, looking at the girl. "Provide a bath and a meal for her, and no word about this to anyone." He retreated to the study, closing the heavy oak door before answering. The lawyer's voice sounded anxious on the other end of the line. "I received a curious call from the cemetery caretaker. He said you left with an unknown child. I thought it best to check in directly." The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. The speed with which the information had reached the lawyer was disturbing. "I'm dealing with a personal matter. There's no cause for concern." Of course," replied the lawyer with feigned casualness. "I just thought it prudent to alert you to potential complications. Kidnapping, for example, is a serious charge." "No one was kidnapped," the millionaire snapped, irritation growing. "And I would appreciate it if you didn't spread rumors about my private affairs." There was a significant pause. "Certainly, as your lawyer and friend for so many years, I only want to protect your interests. May I stop by later to discuss this? In person? That won't be necessary." The millionaire ended the call before the lawyer could insist. He stood still for a few minutes, looking at the portrait of his wife above the fireplace. It was a photo from their wedding day. She was smiling with a sparkle in her eyes that he had never seen in any other woman. Beside the picture frame, her wedding ring rested in a small glass box recovered from the ruins of the clinic after the fire. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. The housekeeper entered with a disapproving expression. "The child is taking a bath under the supervision of one of the maids. I brought some old clothes we kept in the attic." She paused deliberately. "Sir, forgive my bluntness, but this is unwise. We know how you still grieve for Mrs. And I understand that the anniversary is approaching, but bringing a street child, a home, people will talk." The millionaire stared at her. She was wearing a pendant, identical to the one I gave my wife. The housekeeper paled. "Many jewels look alike, sir, and street children are known for petty theft. This pendant was unique, designed by me, made in Paris." He approached, lowering his voice. "And she said my wife is alive." The housekeeper took a step back, putting her hand to her chest. "Sir, please don't torture yourself like this. We've been through this. The conspiracy theories, the private detectives, the fruitless searches. You are finally moving on. What if I've been burying emptiness for 7 years?" The question hung in the air, heavy as lead. "Grief does terrible things to our minds, sir." The housekeeper softened her tone. "This child has probably heard stories about you, about the tragedy. Maybe she was even instructed by someone to extort you." A new call interrupted the conversation. It was the head of security, informing him that an unknown car was parked near the gate of the property. The millionaire gave instructions to monitor the vehicle without approaching it. He hung up, thoughtful. "Don't mention the girl's presence to anyone," he ordered the housekeeper, "and tell the rest of the staff to do the same." When he was finally alone, the millionaire opened the hidden safe behind one of the panels in the library. Besides valuable documents and jewelry, there was a yellowed envelope with the investigation reports on the fire at the clinic. Reports that had never fully convinced him. At the other end of the mansion, the girl stared wide-eyed at the room larger than the entire house where she had lived. She was now wearing clean clothes, although much too big for her frail body. The pendant remained firmly around her neck. She had flatly refused to remove it, even during the bath. Sitting on the edge of the enormous bed, she murmured words that sounded like a promise. "I found him, like you asked. Now he's going to help us. He's going to take us home." As night fell over the mansion, the millionaire remained in his study, spreading old documents over the wide mahogany desk. Police reports, medical records, newspaper clippings, fragments of the puzzle that had never completely made sense. The fire at the clinic had been classified as accidental, caused by an electrical fault, but there had always been inconsistencies that the authorities seemed willing to ignore. A slight creak in the door interrupted his thoughts. The girl was standing in the doorway, almost unrecognizable after the bath. Her hair, once tangled, revealed itself to be a golden brown shade, framing a delicate face with observant eyes. The borrowed clothes, still too large, had been carefully folded at the edges. The pendant shone against her clean skin. "Can't sleep?" asked the millionaire, indicating a nearby chair. The child approached with hesitant steps, looking at the scattered documents. "She does that too. She looks at old papers and pictures when she thinks I'm asleep." The millionaire felt his heart race. "Can you tell me more about her? What does she look like now?" The girl sat on the edge of the chair, her legs swinging without reaching the floor. "She has short hair. She says it used to be long and pretty." She made a vague gesture around her own face. "She has marks here and here, injuries that didn't heal right. And how does she talk? What does she say about before?" "Sometimes she talks funny, like the words don't want to come out. She gets frustrated." The girl bit her lip, thoughtful. "She always says there were blue flowers in the garden of the big house, that you brought a new flower every Friday." The millionaire paled. The blue hydrangeas, a whim of his wife that he religiously indulged, a detail that had never been published in the press, something intimate they shared only with each other. "She told me about the day you met," continued the girl, "in a library. You spilled coffee on her book. Italian art history, 16th century, murmured the millionaire, almost to himself. The girl nodded, animated. She tried to save the wet book with a handkerchief that had the initials DAM. From that mysterious soul, he completed, his voice choked. It was a private joke between them. The initials embroidered on the handkerchief he had used to clean the book the day they met. Daquela alma misteriosa, não tem uma tradução direta que mantenha o mesmo impacto e significado. A adaptação, from that mysterious soul, preserva a essência romântica e misteriosa da frase original. The silence that followed was filled with suppressed emotions. The millionaire studied the child's face, seeking answers he couldn't formulate into questions. "Why didn't she try to contact me before?" he finally asked. The girl shrugged. "She says they were always watching. That she tried once, but they almost found us. That's when we had to change hiding places. Who are they?" People who wanted her money, who thought she knew too much. The child spoke as if repeating words heard many times. She said, "The person you trust most is the most dangerous." The millionaire rubbed his face, feeling the weight of exhaustion and doubt. "And why now? Why send you after so long? The girl's eyes filled with tears. "She's dying, for real this time. She said she couldn't leave without you knowing the truth, without you taking care of me." That last sentence hit the millionaire like a physical blow. "Taking care of you? What did she mean by that?" The child didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out her small hand and touched one of the photographs on the table. An image of the millionaire's wife in a winter garden surrounded by orchids. "She has that same picture, but cut off here." She pointed to the edge of the image. "She always says I'm just like you when I get angry." The world around the millionaire seemed to freeze. An impossible thought began to form in his mind. An idea, so absurd and yet so perfectly logical that it left him breathless. When is your birthday?" he asked, barely able to articulate the words. "December 4th, the girl replied readily. "I was born when the snow was starting to fall. She always says it was the happiest and saddest day of her life." December 4th, exactly 6 months after his wife's supposed death. The millionaire felt the blood run cold in his veins. If his wife had been alive after the fire, if she had survived, could she have been pregnant at that time? "She never let me call her mom," continued the child, oblivious to the turmoil of emotions that stirred the millionaire. "She said it was dangerous, that I needed to forget that word until I found you, that you were the only person who could save us." The millionaire stood up abruptly, walking to the window to hide the tremor that gripped his body. Outside, the night was clear and cold, with stars shining indifferent to the drama unfolding beneath them. When he finally turned around, there was a new determination in his gaze. "Tomorrow," he said, "we're going to unearth more than just memories. It's time to find out what really happened at that clinic." The girl nodded solemnly, as if she fully understood the gravity of the situation. For a moment, in the dim light of the study, her eyes reflected the same stubborn strength he had seen so often in his wife's gaze. And for the first time in 7 years, the millionaire allowed a small flame of hope to ignite in his hardened heart. Dawn found the millionaire already awake, watching the city awaken from the terrace of his penthouse. He hadn't been able to sleep. His mind was racing with possibilities and fears. The girl was sleeping in the guest room, watched discreetly by one of the most trusted maids. During the night, he had made crucial decisions. "I don't recall scheduling a meeting." The lawyer smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "How long have we been friends? 20 years. Some things don't need scheduling." His gaze shifted to the partially hidden child. "And this must be our young visitor. I hear she's causing quite a stir." "I don't see how that's any of your business," replied the millionaire, keeping his tone neutral despite the growing distrust. "Oh, but it is my business. Everything related to your well-being and your interests is my business." The lawyer took a step forward. "You know, I received a very interesting call today from Pinewood Clinic." The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. Pinewood Clinic, the place where his wife had been hospitalized, the epicenter of the tragedy that had changed his life. "And what did they want?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Apparently, someone using your name requested access to the old files related to a certain incident." The lawyer adjusted his tie casually. "I found it strange, since I had personally taken care of closing all those unpleasant matters years ago." The millionaire felt the girl's hand grab his, squeezing tightly. She had sensed the growing tension, the danger implicit in that seemingly cordial conversation. "Maybe I'm tired of closed versions," replied the millionaire, holding the lawyer's gaze. "Maybe it's time to reopen some files." The lawyer's smile faltered for an instant. "I understand your desire for clarity, but some stones are better left unturned. Unpleasant things tend to hide underneath." or inconvenient truths. A tense silence settled between the two men. The girl remained still, but the millionaire could feel her small body trembling slightly. "This child," said the lawyer finally, "where did she really come from? What stories has she been telling?" Before the millionaire could answer, the girl stepped forward, facing the lawyer with surprising intensity. "You're the man in the photograph," she said, her voice small but firm. "The man she fears, the one who was there that night." The lawyer paled visibly, all pretenses of casualness disappearing in an instant. "What nonsense is this? What ridiculous stories has she been telling you?" He turned to the millionaire. "Do you see what's happening here? You're being manipulated by a street child with fanciful tales." But the millionaire wasn't listening anymore. His mind worked at full speed, connecting dots that had previously seemed scattered. His lawyer and longtime friend had been the first to arrive at the clinic after the fire. He had been the one who identified the remains, who rushed the funeral, who insisted that he accept his wife's death without asking too many questions. "I think it's time for you to leave," said the millionaire, his voice cold as ice. "My new lawyer will be in touch regarding the termination of your contract." The man let out an incredulous laugh. "After everything I've done for you? Because of the fantasies of some random child?" His gaze hardened. "Think carefully, my friend. You have a lot to lose, and apparently a lot to recover too." The millionaire pressed a discreet button on his watch, and immediately 2 of the new security guards appeared in the hall. "Please escort Mr. out." When the lawyer finally left, casting furious glances over his shoulder, the millionaire felt the adrenaline leave his body, leaving him exhausted. He knelt down to be at the girl's level, his daughter. "What did you mean about him being there that night?" The child squeezed the pendant between her fingers, a gesture that the millionaire now recognized as a reflection of anxiety. She has a hidden picture underneath the floorboard of the house, a man in a gray suit leaving the clinic while everything was burning. It's him. The girl paused, taking a deep breath. She says he's the one who locked the door so she couldn't escape. Night fell over the mansion, bringing with it an oppressive silence. The millionaire had doubled the security, positioning men at every access point of the property. The girl's revelation about the lawyer had transformed vague suspicions into painful certainties. In his study, surrounded by monitors displaying the security cameras, the millionaire tried to organize the fragments of the conspiracy. Why would his lawyer, a friend of decades, orchestrate something so monstrous? The answer began to form when his personal assistant entered with a thick folder. "The documents you requested, sir. All financial movements for the last 8 years, including transactions from subsidiary companies and foundations." The millionaire nodded, dismissing the assistant. He plunged into the meticulous analysis of the financial records, seeking the pattern he knew was there. The girl slept in the next room, exhausted after the day's events. Before falling asleep, she had made the millionaire promise that they would go get her mother, the next morning. The urgency in her voice was palpable, as if she felt the time was running out. After hours poring over the documents, the millionaire finally found what he was looking for. In the months following his wife's supposed death, a series of complex transactions had transferred substantial control of his assets to foundations managed by his lawyer. Mergers, acquisitions, and sales that he had signed amidst grief without questioning, trusting blindly in the man he considered his closest friend. A perfect plan: eliminate the wife, who was beginning to suspect the financial maneuvers, manipulate the husband, devastated by loss, and gradually drain the family fortune through seemingly legitimate structures. The phone rang, jolting him from his thoughts. It was his contact in the FBI. "We've just traced the background of your man," informed the grave voice on the other end. We found records of substantial transfers to a private clinic in another country, continuously for the last 7 years. And there's more. Records of monthly trips to a rural area about 120 miles from the capital. Always the same destination, always with an interval of exactly 30 days, adaptando a distância para milhas, uma unidade comum no ZEUA. The millionaire's heart raced. Do you have the exact coordinates? Sending them now, but there's a problem. We've detected unusual movement in the last 12 hours. Several vehicles leaving the city heading towards the same area. Hanging up the phone, the millionaire felt panic rise. They had been imprudent. The lawyer had realized that his secret was at risk and was now one step ahead. He ran to the room where the girl was sleeping, waking her up gently. We need to go now. They might reach your mother before we do. The child awoke instantly, the fear evident in her eyes. He's going to hurt her. Not if we can stop him. The millionaire was already in motion, contacting his new security team. Do you remember the way? Every detail could be important now. In less than 20 minutes, 2 armored SUVs left the mansion through a secondary exit, while a third vehicle departed ostentatiously through the main entrance, a distraction for potential observers. On the dark road, following the girls, instructions and the coordinates received, the millionaire felt each second weigh like lead. Beside him, the child remained strangely calm, guiding them with impressive precision through the back roads and rural paths. There, she indicated, finally, pointing to a dirt road almost invisible between dense trees. Then there's a small bridge, and the house is hidden behind those hills. The driver slowed down, cautiously advancing on the uneven road. They turned off the headlights, guiding themselves only by the faint moonlight. "Stop," whispered the girl suddenly. "Something's wrong." The millionaire signaled for the driver to obey. In the silence of the night, they could hear the distant sound of engines. "They got there first," he murmured, feeling his stomach sink. He turned to the leader of the security team. "How many men do you think they have?" "By the sound, 3 or 4 vehicles, maybe 10 men. And us? 8, distributed in the 2 cars, all ex-special forces as requested." The millionaire made a quick decision. "We'll split up. You advance with 6 men as a distraction on the main road. I'll go with 2 on the side, using the girl as a guide. She knows the surroundings." The plan was executed with military precision, while the first group advanced frontally, creating a perimeter of confrontation. The millionaire, the girl, and 2 guards bypassed the property through a narrow path between trees. "There's an entrance from the back," explained the child, her voice almost inaudible. "Behind the old barn. We used it to escape when we thought someone was coming." They approached the house stealthily, an old 2-story construction, partially hidden by vegetation. Flashlight beams moved between the trees around, and male voices could be heard giving orders. One of the lawyer's men passed less than 10 feet from their hiding place, speaking into a radio. "Search everything. The boss wants the woman alive. The priority is to recover all documents and the flash drive. Adaptando a unidade de medida para pés, que é mais comum nos SPA. Pendrive, flash drive." The millionaire's heart leaped. Alive, she was alive, and apparently she possessed evidence that could incriminate the lawyer. Guided by the girl, they managed to reach the back of the house undetected. The back door was broken down, and boot marks in the mud indicated that several men had already entered. "She hides in the attic when there's danger," whispered the girl, grabbing the millionaire's hand. "There's a secret passage behind the big bookshelf." A shot echoed inside the house, followed by screams and the sound of furniture being overturned. The millionaire felt his blood run cold. First, he had requested a hearing with Judge Hamilton, an old friend of his father who owed him some favors. Second, he had hired a new security team through contacts abroad, people without ties to his current structure. And finally, he had asked a trusted laboratory to prepare for an urgent DNA test. The cell phone vibrated in his pocket, a text message from his lawyer insisting on a meeting. The millionaire ignored it. The girl's phrase echoed in his mind. The person you trust most is the most dangerous. A slight noise behind him made him turn around. The child was standing at the terrace door, watching him with cautious curiosity. "Good morning," he said, indicating the chair next to him. "Did you sleep well?" The girl approached with the same caution as the day before. "The bed is too soft. I could barely sleep." She paused, staring at the city below. "We're very high. Up, 18th floor," confirmed the millionaire. "You can see the whole downtown from here." He pointed to a distant building. "That's where I work." The girl's eyes wandered across the urban landscape, so different from the isolated scenery she was used to. "She said you lived in a big house with a garden, not in a place like this." "Yes, we had a house in the suburbs, but after the accident, I couldn't stay there anymore. Too many memories." He hesitated before asking, "The house where you lived, could you find it again?" The girl nodded slowly. "It's far from the city, hidden among trees. There's a stone path and a blue door." She frowned in concentration. "We passed an abandoned gas station and then an old bridge before we got there." The millionaire made mental notes of these details. "And when did you leave there? When was the last time you saw her?" A shadow crossed the child's face. 3 days ago. She got very sick. The cough wouldn't stop. There was blood." Her little fingers squeezed the pendant. "She gave me this, explained the way to the cemetery, and told me not to go back. That it was dangerous." The millionaire's heart ached at the mental image of a wounded and sick woman, sending that child alone on a desperate mission. "What is she hoping I'll do now?" he asked, more to himself than to the girl. "Find her before it's too late," replied the child with a cutting simplicity. Breakfast arrived, brought by the housekeeper, who cast distrustful glances at the girl as she served. The child watched the variety of foods with fascination, but waited until the millionaire began to eat before serving herself, with careful and precise movements that spoke of discipline and strict instructions. "Can you read?" asked the millionaire, noticing how she examined the juice packaging. "She taught me. We have a lot of old books in the house." The girl paused, taking a sip of juice. "She made me read aloud every night. She said it was important. For when I found you." Once again, the millionaire felt that inexplicable connection grow between them. It was as if every word of the girl unearthed fragments of a past he believed to be sealed forever. "Today, we'll have a busy day," he announced, checking his watch. "I need to take care of some things, and I want you to come with me." The girl nodded without questioning. An hour later, they were in the private office of a doctor friend of the millionaire, in a discreet building downtown. The collection of material for the DNA test was quick and painless, a simple swab on the cheek of both. "How long until we have the results?" asked the millionaire as the doctor carefully labeled the samples. "With the urgency you requested, maybe even tonight, tomorrow morning at the latest." The doctor looked from the girl to the millionaire, the curiosity evident in his eyes, but too professional to verbalize his questions. Back in the car, the millionaire instructed the driver to head to the public records office. The girl watched the city through the window, fascinated with the movement and the lights. "What are we looking for?" she asked eventually. "Clues, confirmations." The millionaire hesitated. "I need to check if there is any record of you somewhere. Birth certificate, adoption papers, anything." At the records department, using his influence and a generous expediting fee, the millionaire gained access to the files of the last 7 years. There was no birth record for any child with the characteristics and approximate date mentioned by the girl. That could mean that you were born in another city, or that... He didn't complete the sentence. Unregistered births usually indicated problematic circumstances, children born in conditions of isolation outside the official health system. The girl watched the files with a silent curiosity. She never took me to the doctor. She said it was dangerous, that we had to hide until the right moment. On leaving the records department, the millionaire noticed a black car parked across the street, the same one that had been reported near his mansion the night before. "We're being followed," he murmured to the driver, who nodded discreetly. On the way back, the millionaire made an impulsive decision. "Change the route. Let's go to the old house." The driver obeyed without questioning, diverting to a secondary road that led to the city's elegant suburbs. After 20 minutes, they entered a wooded neighborhood where imposing mansions hid behind high walls. "Is this where you lived?" asked the girl, her face pressed against the window pane. "Yes. I haven't been here in years." The millionaire's voice sounded distant, lost in memories. The gate of the property opened automatically. He had never cancelled the biometric access. The long avenue of cypresses led to a Victorian mansion impeccably maintained, despite being uninhabited. "I keep staff to take care of the house," explained the millionaire, noticing the child's questioning look. "I could never get rid of it." As they got out of the car, a sense of déjà vu hit him hard. How many times had they walked that path together, he and his wife, discussing plans for the future? The girl walked slowly beside him, absorbing every detail. When they reached the back garden, she stopped abruptly, pointing to an abandoned flower bed. "The blue flowers used to be there?" The millionaire stared at her, surprised. "How do you know that?" "She drew it for me, many times." The girl approached the flower bed, kneeling down to touch the soil. She said this was the happiest place in the world. That simple gesture, so familiar, made the millionaire's heart skip a beat. It was exactly what his wife used to do, kneel next to the hydrangeas, caressing the soil as if she were touching something precious. The moment was interrupted by the ring of the cell phone. It was the laboratory. The preliminary DNA results were ready. The air in the laboratory office felt thick, charged with expectation. The millionaire sat rigidly in the leather chair while the girl explored the three-dimensional DNA models displayed on the shelf with fascination. "The results are surprising," began the geneticist, a middle-aged man with probing eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. "We confirmed with 2 independent tests to be absolutely certain." The millionaire felt his throat tighten. "And the probability of paternity is greater than 99.9%. The doctor slid a folder with colorful charts across the desk. "This child is without a doubt your biological daughter." Although he already suspected the truth, hearing the confirmation was like receiving a physical blow. The millionaire closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the impact of the revelation. "There's more," continued the geneticist, hesitant. "Based on your complete genetic profile that we had on file and the child's specific markers, we can confirm that the mother is compatible with your wife's profile." The world seemed to spin around the millionaire. His wife had survived the fire, was pregnant at the time, and had given birth to that child, his daughter. The girl who was now curiously examining a microscope in the corner of the room was living proof that everything he had believed in the last 7 years was an elaborate lie. "This will stay between us," the millionaire said to the geneticist, his voice regaining its firmness. The doctor nodded solemnly. "As always, absolute discretion. The results are encrypted and the samples will be destroyed as requested." On the way back to the mansion, the millionaire watched the girl, his daughter, playing distractedly with the pendant. Every gesture, every expression now revealed small similarities that he hadn't noticed before. "We need to find her," he said finally, breaking the silence. "You're the woman who took care of you. I need you to take me to the house where you lived." The girl nodded, serious. "She said you were going to want that. But she also said it was dangerous, that we needed to make sure no one was following us. I have trustworthy men now, new security that no one knows." The millionaire pressed a button on the car panel, activating the soundproof partition. "Can you try to describe the route? Any detail can help." The child closed her eyes, concentrating. "Leaving the city, there's an old road with trees on both sides. Then an abandoned gas station with a broken red sign. We turned there onto a dirt road." As she described, the millionaire typed the information on his tablet, trying to map the possible location. The description pointed to a rural area about 2 hours from the city, an area with isolated properties and dense vegetation. When they arrived at the mansion, a surprise awaited them. The millionaire's lawyer was in the entrance hall, talking animatedly with the housekeeper. "Ah, finally," he exclaimed upon seeing them. "I've been trying to reach you all day. We have urgent matters to discuss." The millionaire gently pushed the girl behind him in a protective gesture. "Stay here with her," he ordered one of the guards. He turned to the girl, holding her small shoulders. "Don't move from here, understand? Whatever happens." The child's eyes shone with fear, but she nodded bravely. Wielding the gun he never thought he'd need to use, the millionaire entered the house, followed by the other guard. The darkness of the interior was cut by beams of flashlights that moved erratically. Frustrated voices echoed through the rooms. "She's not here. Keep looking. Check all the walls, all the floors." Taking advantage of the confusion, the millionaire and his guard advanced silently toward the staircase leading to the upper floor. Each step was agony, each second an eternity. In the second-floor hallway, they heard a subtle noise, like labored breathing muffled by fabric. It came from behind a heavy bookshelf against the wall. At that moment, heavy boots sounded on the stairs. Someone was coming up. With a silent gesture, the millionaire instructed his guard to create a distraction. The man nodded and moved to the other end of the hallway, deliberately knocking over a heavy object. The noise attracted the attention of the intruders, who immediately converged on the source of the sound. Taking advantage of the moment, the millionaire slid to the bookshelf, examining it quickly. There was no visible mechanism, no clue how to open the secret passage mentioned by the girl. "Where?" he whispered to himself, his hands desperately groping the wooden structure. That's when he noticed a specific book protruded slightly on the third shelf. Italian art history, 16th century, the same book on which he had spilled coffee the day he met his wife. He pulled it carefully and heard a soft click. The bookshelf moved a few inches, revealing a narrow opening. The millionaire slipped inside, closing the passage behind him. He found himself in a small space, not exactly a room, more like a gap between walls. A makeshift ladder led to a low attic. In the dark, he could hear an irregular breathing, punctuated by small groans of pain. "It's me," he whispered, carefully climbing the steps. "I came to get you." A tense silence followed his words. Then a weak, raspy voice, almost unrecognizable, but still unmistakably hers, replied, "How do I know it's really you?" The millionaire felt warm tears run down his face. 7 years of mourning, of unanswered questions. And now, only a thin layer of darkness separated them. "The day I proposed to you, you said no." His voice failed with the emotion of the memory. "You said you'd only accept when I learned to prepare your afternoon tea exactly the way you liked it." A muffled sob came from the darkness. The millionaire advanced a few more steps until his hand found a thin fabric and under it the outline of a shoulder. He drew his phone, using the faint light of the screen to illuminate the space. And then he saw her, huddled against the wall, covered by a worn blanket, her face partially hidden by strands of graying hair. When she finally looked up, the impact was physical. Half of her face was marked by burn scars, the skin regenerated unevenly. One of her eyes seemed not to open completely, but in the other, in that still, perfect eye, was the same light that had bewitched him 2 decades ago. "You found her," murmured the woman, her voice trembling. "Our daughter." The millionaire fell to his knees beside her, unable to contain the sobs that now shook his body. "I thought you were dead, all these years. They tried to kill me," she replied, each word a visible effort. "The fire, it wasn't an accident. I managed to escape through the ventilation ducts, but the burns." She brought her hand to her scarred face. "When I found out I was pregnant, I knew I couldn't go back. They'd find me, they'd find us." Who? Why? The questions that had tormented him for 7 years could finally be answered. "Your lawyer and the partners in the pharmaceutical division. I discovered embezzlement schemes, illegal drug testing." She coughed, an alarming sound that reverberated in her fragile chest. "I have documents, evidence. I've kept it all this time, waiting for the right moment." Heavy footsteps and excited voices on the other side of the wall reminded them of the imminent danger. "We need to get out of here now," whispered the millionaire, already assessing the options. "Can you walk?" She tried to get up, but her legs buckled. "Not much." With a decisive movement, he lifted her into his arms. She was alarmingly light, her body reduced to little more than skin and bones. "I'm going to get you out of here. We're going to get our daughter, and I already found her," interrupted a cold voice. The millionaire turned sharply. In the entrance to the hideout was his former lawyer, holding the girl by the arm with one hand and a gun with the other. "What a touching family reunion," commented the man, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Beauty and the Beast, finally together. Again, and with an heiress on top of that. What a delightful surprise." "Let her go," ordered the millionaire, carefully placing his wife back on the ground and positioning himself in front of her. "I don't think you're in a position to make demands." The lawyer squeezed the girl's arm, who stifled a groan of pain. "Let's negotiate, like the businessmen we are. You have something I want, and I have something you want." "What do you want?" "The documents, the flash drive, all the evidence your dear wife has been collecting all these years, hidden like a rat." His cold eyes gleamed in the dim light. Who would have thought that that emotional fool would be so meticulous, tracking every transaction, every illegal test, every backroom deal? The millionaire's wife moved slightly behind him. "It's all with the right people now. If anything happens to us, the evidence will be sent automatically to the authorities." The lawyer's smile faltered for an instant. "Interesting bluff, but you've always been terrible at poker." He dragged the girl closer to the entrance. "So, let's simplify things. Come with me now, calmly, and maybe, just maybe, I'll allow your precious family to remain united. Somewhere far away and forgotten, of course." The millionaire assessed the situation. His guard had probably been neutralized. The other one remained outside with the rest of the team, unaware of the danger inside the house. There was no visible exit beyond the passage blocked by the lawyer. It was the girl who broke the impasse. With surprising agility, she stepped hard on the lawyer's foot and, in the moment of distraction caused by the pain, bit the hand that held her arm. The man roared, his grip loosening enough for her to escape. The gun went off, the bullet ricocheting off the wooden wall. "Run!" shouted the millionaire, lunging at the lawyer before he could aim again. The two men collided violently, falling together through the secret passage into the hallway of the house. The gun escaped the lawyer's hands, sliding across the polished floor. Unbalanced by the fall, they rolled across the hallway, each trying to subdue the other. Years of contained anger exploded in the millionaire, giving him a strength that surprised his opponent. "You took everything from me," he growled, delivering a blow that struck the lawyer in the face. 7 years! You stole 7 years of our lives. In the darkness of the hallway, they didn't realize that the fight was bringing them dangerously close to the staircase. It was only when their bodies were already at the edge of the first step that the millionaire understood the danger. In a desperate effort, he tried to grab the handrail, but the momentum was too strong. The two men plummeted down the stairs, a violent fall that ended with a dull thud on the landing below. Pain radiated throughout the millionaire's body. Something in his left arm was certainly broken. Beside him, the lawyer lay motionless, a trickle of blood running from his temple. "Dad!" The girl's voice echoed from the top of the stairs, the first time she had called him that. "I'm okay," he managed to reply, despite the searing pain. "Stay up there with your mother." At that moment, the front door of the house was broken. Down, flashlight beams cut through the darkness, and voices commanded everyone to surrender. The millionaire prepared for the worst until he heard a familiar voice. His head of security. "Perimeter secured, sir. The house is under our control." The tension left his body like a wave, leaving only exhaustion and pain. He fell back to the floor, looking at the top of the stairs, where his daughter now appeared, supporting his staggering wife. Together. Finally together, after 7 years of separation and lies. Dawn found the millionaire sitting in the waiting room of the private hospital, his left arm immobilized in a newly placed cast. The silent hallways were occasionally traversed by nurses with soft footsteps, casting curious glances in his direction. In a special suite, protected by 2 guards at the door, doctors examined his wife, performing the first complete medical evaluation she had received in 7 years. The girl had refused to leave her mother's side, and the doctors wisely didn't insist. The bond between the two was something almost palpable, forged in years of isolation and shared fear. The head of security approached, offering a cup of coffee. "The perimeter is secure, sir. We have men at all entrances, and the entire floor has been isolated. As for your former lawyer, how is he?" asked the millionaire, more out of a need for information than genuine concern. "Stable, serious concussion, some fractures. He's in police custody on the 4th floor. The authorities are already in possession of the documents your wife was keeping." The millionaire nodded, feeling the weight of exhaustion. The last 24 hours had been surreal, a whirlwind that had completely transformed his existence. The others involved? Being apprehended at this moment. The flash drive contained detailed records of all the illegal transactions, names, dates, amounts. Your wife was extraordinarily meticulous. A small smile formed on the millionaire's lips. Even disfigured, even hidden, she was still the brilliant and determined woman he had fallen in love with. The door to the medical suite opened, and the chief physician came out with a grave expression. "May we speak, sir?" They moved a few steps. Down the hallway, the doctor consulted his notes before speaking. "Her overall condition is concerning. Chronic malnutrition, advanced pulmonary infection, burn scars that have never received adequate treatment." He paused, choosing his words. "She survived by sheer willpower, from what I can tell. Will she recover?" The question came out as a whisper. "With proper treatment, appropriate nutrition, and physical therapy, yes, but it will be a long process." The doctor adjusted his glasses. "The physical scars can be partially treated with reconstructive surgeries. The emotional ones..." He left the sentence hanging in the air. "And the girl, surprisingly healthy, considering the circumstances. Small signs of nutritional deficiencies, but nothing serious. Physically, at least, she was well cared for." The doctor smiled slightly. "Your wife clearly prioritized the child's well-being above her own." The millionaire thanked the doctor, and after a few moments to gather courage, entered the suite. The soft light of the rising sun filtered through the curtains, illuminating the spacious room with a golden glow. His wife rested in the hospital bed, more fragile and vulnerable than he had ever seen her. Tubes and monitors connected her to machines that beeped softly. Beside her, curled up in an armchair too big for her small body, the girl watched every movement, every expression on her mother's face with feline intensity. When he entered, the child immediately straightened up, positioning herself protectively between him and her mother, a reflex of years living in a state of constant alert. "It's okay," he whispered, stopping at a respectful distance. "We're safe now." The woman in the bed opened her eyes slowly, a movement that seemed to require tremendous effort. When her gaze met his, a whirlwind of emotions crossed her scarred face: relief, fear, shame, and finally, something close to peace. "I'm sorry," were her first words, her voice raspy and broken, "for not coming back sooner." The millionaire approached the bed, silent tears streaming down his face. "I should have searched harder. I should have questioned. I never should have believed." She raised a trembling hand, interrupting him. They were convincing. The body belonged to an unknown patient. They switched records, and She looked at the girl. "I found out I was pregnant. I knew. They'd come after me, after both of us. I had to protect her. Why didn't you seek help? The police, my family?" "I tried. Once." She closed her eyes as if the memory was too painful. "The detective I hired was found in the river 3 days later. I realized they had too much reach, too much influence. I could only come back when I had irrefutable evidence." The girl, still vigilant, finally spoke. "She sent letters to you, many letters, but they all came back." The millionaire looked at his wife, questioning. "Intercepted," she explained weakly. "Your lawyer monitored everything, controlled everything around you, people, information, businesses." A shadow crossed her scarred face. "I feared he'd end up poisoning you too, eventually, when he had transferred everything he wanted." At that moment, the girl approached timidly, extending her small hand to touch the millionaire's. The gesture, so simple and yet so profound, triggered a lump in his throat. "You kept her safe," he said to his wife, his voice choked with emotion. "Against all odds, you protected her and raised her." "She kept me alive," replied the woman, with a loving look at her daughter. "In the darkest days, when the pain was unbearable, when losing everything seemed too much, she was my light." A gentle knock on the door interrupted the moment. One of the security guards entered respectfully. "Sir, the press is swarming the entrance to the hospital. Rumors about your miraculous reappearance are spreading." The millionaire nodded, understanding that the bubble of privacy they had enjoyed was about to burst. The outside world, with its cameras thirsty for scandals and sensational stories, would soon invade this fragile moment. "Prepare the helicopter," he ordered. "We'll transfer her to the mountain clinic as soon as the doctors authorize it." When they were alone again, the millionaire sat carefully on the edge of the bed, taking his wife's frail hand in his own. "I'm never going to leave you two alone again," he promised, looking from the woman to the child. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for these lost years." The girl, watching them intently, finally allowed herself a small smile, the first he had seen on her face. It was a smile that carried the echo of her mother, the same gentle curve of her lips, the same light in her eyes. "Do you believe me now?" she asked, touching the pendant on her neck. "When I said she was alive?" "I believe you," he replied, reaching out to include her in the careful embrace. and I promise I'll never doubt you again." As the sun rose completely on the horizon, bathing the room in golden light, the three remained like that. A family shattered by time and betrayal, now reunited by the courage of a child who had refused to accept the lies of the adult world. The millionaire knew that the journey ahead would be long and difficult. There would be pains to be faced, nightmares to be exorcised, and scars, physical and emotional, that would never completely disappear. But looking at the two figures beside him, he felt a certainty that he had not experienced for a long time. Together, they would find their way back to the light. 6 months had passed since that fateful night. Autumn now painted the trees around the country house with golden and reddish hues, creating a spectacle of colors visible from the large windows of the living room. The millionaire observed the scene from the terrace, a cup of tea cooling in his hands. Not just any tea, his wife's favorite, prepared exactly as she liked it. A ritual he had learned to execute with perfection in recent months. The rural property, located in a mountainous and isolated region, had been carefully chosen and adapted for their new reality. Discreet but omnipresent security, accessibility for the physical limitations that his wife still faced, and above all, space. Space to heal, to grow, to start over. The sound of children's laughter interrupted his thoughts. On the lawn below, his daughter was playing with a newly adopted golden retriever puppy. The transformation of the child was remarkable. The vigilant and distrustful eyes now shone with genuine joy. The once fragile body had gained strength and vigor. And that smile, once so rare, now illuminated her face with increasing frequency. "She looks so much like you when she laughs," said a soft voice behind him. He turned to see his wife at the terrace door, leaning on an elegant cane. Reconstructive surgeries had already significantly improved the mobility of her face and the flexibility of the scarred skin. Treatments would continue for years, but doctors were optimistic. "She has your determination, though," he replied, reaching out to help her sit down, "and your taste in books." She smiled, a smile still asymmetrical, but genuine. "The library you set up for her, I don't think I've ever seen a child so fascinated by words." The comfortable silence that followed was a luxury they had learned to appreciate. No longer the oppressive silence of separation, but the shared quietness of those who rediscovered the value of each other's simple presence. "I received news from the trial," commented the millionaire finally. "The judge denied the request for parole. The lawyer and the others involved will remain in custody until the end of the proceedings. Adaptando o termo liberdade condicional, impara parole." She nodded, her gaze distant. "Sometimes I still have nightmares about that night. The smell of smoke, the locked door." Her hand instinctively touched the scars on her neck. "But then I wake up, and you two are here, and I know it was worth it. Every day, hidden, every pain endured." "I wish I could erase everything you suffered," he said, his voice choked with contained emotion. "No," she replied, surprising him. "The pain brought us here. It taught us the value of time, of truth." Her fingers intertwined with his, and it gave us her. Below, in the garden, the girl was now looking up at them, waving enthusiastically for them to come down and participate in the game. The millionaire couldn't help but notice the pendant still hanging around her neck, the symbol that had united their destinies again. "Is dinner ready?" called the housekeeper from the kitchen door. The same housekeeper who, initially skeptical about the ragged child, now treated her like the princess of the house. The meal took place in an atmosphere of hard-won normality. Conversations about the day, plans for the future, small domestic decisions, everyday luxuries that had once seemed unattainable. After dinner, as was tradition now, they gathered in the library for the nightly reading session. The girl had chosen an adventure book, a story about a treasure lost and found again after many years. The irony did not escape any of the adults. "Can I read the next page?" she asked when the millionaire paused. He passed the book with an encouraging smile. He watched in wonder as she read with impressive fluency for her age, occasionally stumbling on more complex words, but persisting with determination. Later, when the child finally fell asleep in her new room, a space that she herself had helped to decorate, choosing colors and furniture with growing enthusiasm, the millionaire and his wife remained sitting side by side on the porch, watching the stars. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," he said, breaking the contemplative silence, "about the company, about our public life." She looked at him, expectant. She knew this moment would come, the point at which they would need to decide how to reintegrate into the world they had left behind. "I'm going to transfer operational control, keep only a minority stake and board supervision." He took a deep breath. "Our time is too precious now. I want to be present for every moment, every milestone in her life." "Are you sure?" she asked, knowing well how much the company meant to him. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life." His gaze met hers, sincere and resolute. "I lost 7 years. I'm not going to lose another day." A glimmer of tears reflected the moonlight in her eyes. "What about the story? People are going to want to know." "We'll tell our version on our terms when we're ready." He smiled softly. "Until then, the world can wait. This is our story to tell." That night, lying side by side in the bed, they were still relearning to share. They talked about dreams, not the nightmares of the past, but aspirations for the future. Trips they would take when she was stronger. Places they would show their daughter. Moments they would create together. The next morning, the millionaire woke to the sound of laughter coming from the garden. Through the window, he saw his wife and daughter planting flowers in the newly prepared flower bed. Blue hydrangeas, her favorites, which he used to bring every Friday in another life. He watched them for a moment, engraving the scene in his memory. The woman he loved, scarred but not broken by suffering. The daughter he never knew he had, now the center of his universe. And himself, no longer just the lonely and bitter millionaire, but a man rediscovered through the love he thought he had lost forever. Some say that the true value of wealth lies in what it can buy. But he had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that some things, love, trust, family, could never be bought, only earned and cultivated with time, with truth, and with courage. And in that reborn garden, under the golden morning light, 3 hearts once separated by cruelty and greed began, finally, to beat again in unison. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day. What would you do in the millionaire's place? Comment below and share this story with someone special.